I can't believe we actually made it work. I mean, you actually made it work.
We are live right now. We are live right now. Okay, tēnā tātou. I think what we should do is we should go on our phones and make sure. Exit that. Kia ora tātou. Welcome back to what was a very stressful evening, but we're very lucky because Kate was very forgiving of those technical blunders last night and has agreed to come back and chat to us this evening. So she'll be on live in the next 5 to 10 minutes because it is very early in the UK for her right now. But what we will be doing is asking her some questions, and if we have time, we will try and ask some questions from you guys. But we are aware that Kate has only got a little bit of time this morning as it is very early and she's got a lot of stuff to do. So yeah, I just want to say before Kate joins in with us, absolutely biggest apologies on our behalf for last night in terms of the technical difficulties, but we were really happy to get that content to you via a pre-recorded video. And yeah, so we're really happy to still be able to bring you Kate's whakaaro and Kate's kōrero tonight. So if you were able to tune in and catch her short answer, we asked her if COVID-19, you compared the circular, your approach to a circular economy model or doughnut economics, you refer to it as a donut. And so if you were, oh, and here she is. And so if you were to describe the post-COVID recovery as a food item, what would you describe that as? And she did a wonderful job, and some people were able to catch that, but now we have her back, thankfully. Kia ora, Kate. Good morning. How are you?
No, we can't hear you.
We can, oh, not this again. Deja vu. And she can't hear us either, but that's okay. I think that is all good. So what time is it, Thomas? Do you know what time it is right now in the UK?
I think it's 9:20 in the UK, and
oh, I think she's going to come back in. That's all good. She wasn't scheduled to start till about 25 past, so we just wanted to start early to be super duper sure. Hey, Thomas, do you want to talk about your experience last night?
I thought you did really well, Tam, just kind of holding it all together. I was here in this little dark den at the top of this little house, and I was freaking out, basically, but you held it together really well. And it was good to get that video done with the rest of the crew and get that up online. So hopefully Kate will be able to come back and the microphone will work and we'll be able to hear each other, and here it comes,
yeah,
maybe.
Here she comes back. And what an honor it is to have her time, because she must be oh yay, yes. Oh, morena, Kate, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Yes,
Kate, it was, I'm going to be honest with you, I had a brutal night of just sitting there just face palming. It was terrible, and I just thought about your sourdough and all the preparation that you had put into that.
It's gone. My children ate it.
It's gone. Hey, but isn't that such a good analogy for what you were describing, is that it replenishes and it gives to the younger generations?
Yes. Actually, it gave me, I'm going to send a little series of tweets this morning. I was thinking, okay, what food best symbolizes the regenerative, distributive, commons-based feminist economy? It has to be sourdough. And I've got, anyway, so I scribbled down all these little reasons. I got something very good out of that.
So just briefly for people that missed that part, we asked Kate, she makes this analogy about donuts, and we asked how you would describe what food item you would use to describe the post-COVID recovery. And do you want to just quickly rehash some of the things what you talked about and what that item was and how you described that? Because I think you did that really beautifully.
Sure. So it was a jar of starter. Actually, you know what? I will quickly show you exactly what it was.
Yeah,
because I took a photograph of it before I ate it. Here we go. There you are.
Oh, awesome.
There's
That
my
looks so yum.
starter and the bread I made yesterday.
Oh,
So
that looks so yum.
starter is a jam jar of goo that bubbles away, and it's just made of flour and water. And then if you leave that open, a wild yeast that's in the air, a microorganism like a bacteria that's in the air, gets in there and starts fermenting it, as happens with many things. But it's a fabulous thing, and it's like a wild yeast. So you have this jar of starter, you keep it in the fridge, lid off, it's always bubbling away. And to make a sourdough, you just need flour and water and a bit of salt and some starter, and it's delicious. And I made this special donut shaped sourdough loaf for you yesterday. Yeah, my kids then devoured it, so I'm afraid it's gone. But the reason why I think this is such a brilliant symbol of what we need, and I don't even want to use the word recovery, because we don't want to recover what we had. We don't want to go back to where we were. We can't anyway. But we already knew we wanted to transform our economies.
Yeah.
So I think we want renewal. We want social and ecological renewal through transforming our economies. And I think sourdough is a beautiful food for that, because it's regenerative, it's distributive. So it's regenerative by design, because literally that starter, it regenerates every day. You use some, you just add a spoon of flour, add a bit of water, and it bubbles away again. And it's made from this yeast that's in the living world. So it's this beautiful natural ingredient. It's distributive, because you can literally double it, triple it, quadruple it, and divide it up and give it away. So I got this from a neighbor from down my street. And it's passed up and down the street, and I've passed it on to my friends. So it's literally a distributive ingredient. And then it's commons based, because you can't buy starter in the shops. Starter is something a friend gives to you, a neighbor gives to you, a family member gives to you. It's a community ingredient, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And in fact, the woman who gave it to me, I've never met her. I live on this street in Oxford that, to be honest, we've never really connected as a street. And I've always felt bereft of having community. And this crisis meant that we created a WhatsApp group. Somebody went up and down. We made a WhatsApp group, like as has happened with streets all over the world. Yeah. Suddenly we're a community. And so I've got starter from a woman I've never met, and I will meet afterwards. And her son plays double bass, and I play jazz, and we're going to make a jazz band when this is over. And there's all these plans for when it's over. And then it's a feminist ingredient, because it's so quick and easy to make, right? So when I say feminist, I'm thinking about the unpaid caring work that's done. It's traditionally been done by women, but let's say it's the parental work, it's the caring work of the household. And I've never made bread before, because I was thought, got hours of kneading and then leaving it and come back and knead. This stuff takes 10 minutes. You chuck it in a bowl before you go to bed, mix it in the morning, stick in the oven, dawdle. So it's really light and friendly to people who are homeschooling their kids and trying to run an organization and keep a home and look out for the community. So yes, it's regenerative, distributive, commons-based, feminist food. What's not to like?
And cheap.
It's really cheap.
Accessible. Yep.
Accessible. No, I love that. And you can add your own ingredients. I put some walnuts and sunflower seeds in that. And this sour bread, this approach to making bread with wild yeast has been used in cultures all over the world. It's at least 5,000 years old. It's older than metal. So it's got a pretty good track record.
And the interesting thing about you bringing that up is that one of our other panelists that was originally meant to be on that with you, Kara Puketapu Dentist, he also had been making sourdough and sharing that starter around his community. And so I was really gutted you weren't able to hear that. But he also talked a lot about, so his question to the from one of our questioners was around decolonization, and he actually kind of reframed it just as you have around the recovery wording and changed that, and he reworded it to talk about re-indigenizing and how we need to re-indigenize our spaces and to be local. And so I know you've been to Aotearoa already, and he mihi nui ki a koe, so a massive warm welcome to the virtual screens of Aotearoa. And I guess my first question for you actually is given that context, that Aotearoa New Zealand context, how well do you think, just based on your observations, how well do you think New Zealand can, how well placed are we to adopt a doughnut economic system?
Ooh. So I'll say two things. One, when I came to Aotearoa, New Zealand, I always knew that there was a a strong, a revival and a flourishing and a recognition, something transformative going on around Māori culture. When I came, though, I was really struck by hearing people talking about the crown. I was like, what is this crown? This crown, what's this crown? My goodness, it's the crown. It's that's where I come from. And I had actually a very profound realization, and it was in talking with you a lot as well, Thomas. I realized I am part of this country's story. Like, I haven't gone somewhere else. Your story of your country starts back in my country, and I felt really profoundly connected to it and struck by it, and I felt the weight of it, and yeah, it was very profound, actually. And I realized my nation and my history and my privileges are all embedded in the same story as what's happened in New Zealand, and now what is unhappening or rehappening or renewing and decolonizing and de-indigenizing in an amazing way. So then the second thing I'll say is, I think of all the nations in the world, the fact that the indigenous Māori culture is so strong and is emerging in this really flourishing way and is being embraced by a much wider part of the nation is extraordinary, and an extraordinary opportunity to lead in regenerative culture and mindset and symbol and language and practice. So, and I think from afar, you know, you've always got to be careful when you're commenting on someone else's country. I'm from afar. What I'm seeing is from afar, but I'm seeing a politics and a government that is open to well-being and is bringing concepts and frame that actually resonates and embraces and honors and respects that much deeper Māori framing. And I see an opportunity in your country that I think very few other countries have created for themselves.
That's awesome, Kate. I might just jump in, and it's so nice to be able to talk to you again and have the platform working. I think there's a phenomenon out there where people outside of Aotearoa New Zealand are looking in, like you've just described, and are seeing possibility with the living standards framework and you know, other good things that we are doing. But here there is a sense of frustration really with some of the continued debates going on, like that basically pit the idea of the economy against the people. We have this. Should we prioritize health or the economy, or should we prioritize the economy or the environment, as if these things are not, you know, totally connected? And I guess it'd be good to just hear your views on whether this moment that we're living through right now, this profoundly significant moment that we're living through, is a different moment than, say, the global financial crisis, where, you know, there were lots of people saying, oh, things are going to change and capitalism is going to be over and we're going to build a new system. Is this moment that we're living through now, is it different? Is it more hopeful to you?
Well, it could be. It's not done till it's done, and it's not over till it's over, and it's all up for grabs. I think of moments, situations like the financial crisis, like this lockdown moment, these extraordinary disruptions in the world, are an opportunity for, let's say, both sides. They're an opportunity for business as usual and prevailing interests to re-strengthen, re-embed and reinforce their power. And that's what Naomi Klein captured so powerfully in the shock doctrine. And they're also an opportunity for a restart, a renewal, and an overthrow. And that's the transformation that we already know we want and already know we need to make and already know is possible. And both of those possibilities sit there. And that's why I think it's really important not to say, okay, we must only be in crisis now. We must only focus on immediate crisis needs. And then when we've dealt with that, then we can think about the longer term. Because if you leave it like that, the other side have already been making plans and, in fact, embedding plans and re-embedding, right? And already on in the inside of the system. So have that advantage of being on the inside track and shaping institutions. And that's very much, I think, what happened after the financial crisis. You know, major financial banks, they found their employees were brought right into the heart of the Federal Reserve in the US and invited to run it. So it's really crucial now to have a vision of where we want to be going to. And you may have seen that we have downscaled the Doughnut to the level of the city and launched it in the city of Amsterdam on the 8th of April, so just 2 weeks ago. And that was almost coincidental because we had been working on this for nearly a year, working with Amsterdam since September on doing that report, and it became public policy, and they said, well, when something's passed by the council, we release it, and now it's being released, and here we are, and it's happening now. But the timing was very powerful because so many people are looking for a positive vision of where we want to be going. And so there's been a huge, well, an upsurge and a drawing towards it because, at last, something positive, something we can be for. We're not just against coronavirus, we're for this vision. But I see, again, as an outsider speaking, and it's far too easy to idealize other countries. We're all critical of our own politicians and then idealize others. So I'm not going to do that. But, you know, I see a nation that has a well-being budget, has adopted this well-being frame, has diagrams that say this encapsulates the well-being, and it's put the well-being of people and the living world at the heart of it. And to me, that's really crucial to have images and language that start to reframe. And so, as you say, the economy, what is this, the economy? It's not a thing. The economy is the way we provision for our wants and needs. And we do that through household relations, and we do that through the commons, and we do that through market exchange, and we do that through the public provision of goods and services. And the mix of those is continually in play and can be remixed and remade, and can make all the difference between a nation that's far more equitable and healthy and living within the planet's boundaries, and one that's deeply inequitable and competitive and unhappy and blasting over planetary boundaries. So I think, yes, this is an opportunity. Of course, it's a profound opportunity to renew our societies and the living world by transforming our economies in ways that we already knew we needed to do.
Mm. And my apologies for looking down. I'm just watching all the questions coming up on our live stream. People are very happy to have you back. And I was just thinking, I guess something I've been thinking about a lot lately is, you know, I think maybe 12 when the, you know, the 2008 kind of GFC happened, and I didn't really understand what was going on then, and there's been a lot of parallels drawn between that situation and what we're currently facing, and obviously the things that I'm hearing is, you know, this is an opportunity to rejuvenate and to regenerate. And I wonder, were these conversations happening back in 2008 during that crisis, and is there a difference? You know, and things didn't seem to change. You know, we're still very exploitative of people, workers, and our natural resources, our natural taonga as well. So do you think there's a real difference in these moments? And do you think there's anything different about the moment that we are all experiencing right now?
So I think so there's many differences between these two moments. One, the financial crisis was a meltdown from within the system itself. Right, the financial system created so many intricacies and fallacies and imaginaries within its own world to make more money, and then it crashed on itself. And most people outside of it didn't understand a thing of what was going on. So we all had to learn about collateralized debt obligations and credit defaults. What? And most of the people that I finding this really, really hard to understand. It was only actually afterwards when films like The Big Short came out that brilliantly explained this is what happened. Like, oh, that's what happened. It was that simple. It was that mendacious. It was that double face. Wow. Because the financial system has this complexity and cleverness and mathematicians, and most people think, oh, that's too clever and sophisticated for me, I don't understand it. And suddenly it was laid bare that actually it was all built on a lot of lies and false beliefs. That's a very different situation to one where we understand that there is a virus that is highly contagious between human touch and human breath, and therefore we need to keep a distance from ourselves, from each other. So there's a very different underlying situation. I think another difference is what's being revealed now, we realize, okay, what's really fundamentally changed is we're not allowed to meet anymore. And that has shut down so much economic activity. And one thing I really like to point out, and I've got my little toys here. So this little hose pipe, think about some people earn their income through income you earn, you spend it on somebody else's goods or services. So, you know, you buy coffee in a cafe, and then you might go to a class and go to a show, and might, you know, buy something from a shop, and the person who runs a shop goes and buys something from the cafe, and income circulate around and around. And some people earn their money that way, almost like month to month, earning it in that dependency. And that's when markets work well and people are exchanging goods and services. But this pipe does not go round and round. There's a little bit that comes off it here, and it goes down here into my funnel, right? And money's always being funneled off, and it goes for rent. It goes for interest payments, for mortgages. And this is the rentier economy down here that's siphoning off value. It's not putting it back in. It's siphoning it off into a wealth bucket. And what's happened is these people's incomes have stopped because you're not allowed to meet anymore. And therefore you can't go to the cafe, can't go to the show, can't go to the shop. But they're often still obliged to pay rent. And so the real inequalities between this income-based economy and this rent-based economy have become very exposed. And there's a fascinating question of, if people are no longer earning income, should we stop people from being obliged to pay their rent? Should there be a rent freeze, a rent stoppage? Should there be a mortgage holiday? And I think it also calls into a very deep question. Why do we allow this renting? Just because you own a scarce factor of production, like you own land, or you own the power to create money and generate credit like a commercial bank does. So I think it's actually helping us see a real gap between the income-based, goods and services-based economy and the rent economy. And I want that to become visible, because I think we deeply need to question that. Lastly, I'll say that after the financial crisis, there was the Occupy movement, but it was a very big rejection of the system, but there weren't clear alternatives being proposed. And I think now we are luckily in a much better situation. Actually, there are many strong alternatives. There are already governments like your own that say we want to pursue a well-being government, and you're not alone. You've got Scotland, and you've got Costa Rica, and you've got Iceland. And so governments coming through, the We All government. There are frameworks like Doughnut Economics. There are movements like degrowth that have strong positive, here's what we're for. We're not just against the old system. We are proposing a new alternative system. So that's a very different context.
It's so good to have that laid out very clearly, that difference between the sort of real worker-based economy and the sort of effortlessly enrich yourself by already happening to own something economy, which is just so, it's really bad here actually in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have a huge amount of money tied up in housing and commercial debt in housing as well. That's our main bit of our debt. But let's just imagine that our politicians get this right, that Grant Robertson, our finance minister, and Jacinda Ardern, our prime minister, and together with their partners in government, produce an amazing coronavirus economic recovery package that sets us up with a regenerative, community wealth-based economy, which has got infrastructure that's fit for purpose in the 21st century. If we do that, what difference does it make to the rest of the world, I guess is my question, because we're an export-driven economy. We rely on other countries to buy our stuff for money to come in. How will we really influence the rest of the world by doing this, I guess, is a question probably on a lot of people's minds.
So first of all, let me say, do it because you love your nation. Do it because you love the lands that you found yourself living in. Do it because you love the place that is Aotearoa. And again, you've got phenomenal Māori culture to remind and reteach and retell why that place is so loved. So do it out of respect for Mother Earth right where you stand. Don't always ask why, what are we to the rest of the world? I often hear from New Zealand a little bit of, we're so at the other end of the world, we can't possibly matter. We're just doing our little thing on our islands, right? Why does it matter? So first of all, do it for yourselves. Yeah. Second, inspirational example is phenomenal. Right, I just told you that we released this here it is, Amsterdam City Doughnut Report We published it on the
Whoa.
8th of April.
You got everything with you.
I've got this is just about my favorite toy right now, because we published this on the 8th of April and I wrote a blog about it. And towards the end of my blog, I just said, listen, if you're interested in downscaling the donut to where you are, whether it's your neighborhood or your nation or your town or your village or your region, just fill in this little form and we'll get in touch. We've had over 220 expressions of interest. Some of them are from nations, some of them from villages, some of them from streets. The inspiration of an example, and I really profoundly believe that actually one of the very important ways that change happens is when people see someone a bit like me, like a teacher like me, already teaching that class I thought was off the syllabus, a nation like mine, already doing that thing that seemed impossible, a street like mine, already being a phenomenal community. So we are inspired by example. And so now, if New Zealand, and by the way, you must know that New Zealand saying we're going to have a well-being budget, that is flying all over the world. Wow. This isn't researchers or activists talking about it. This is a government actually leading with it. That already has resonance. And then just lastly, you mentioned, Thomas, you know, if we were to have like 21st century infrastructure, I mean, one of my favorite tweets actually last year was something you tweeted, which is that, how long did it take to fly from Auckland to Wellington? It's about an hour?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's an hour.
Okay.
It's an hour long flight, yeah.
It's an hour, okay. And I was in a debate last year with a New Zealand economist, Arthur Grimes, and I was saying we all need to fly less, and he's saying it's all right for you in Europe, you know, you're near everything. And I pointed out that half my family live in Australia, so it's not so easy actually. But there's 27 flights a day from Auckland to Wellington.
Yeah.
And three trains a week.
Yeah.
Three trains a week. I would never take a 1 hour flight. I travel by train if I can get somewhere in the same day. So I go to Italy by train. I go to Belgium. I go to, you know, across Europe by train. So I'm just coming back to this point that, well, what I sometimes hear from New Zealand, we're on the other end of the earth and we're sort of just doing our thing. It's like, wow, you guys are flying all the time from New Zealand to Auckland. From Wellington to Auckland. Yeah. And there's 3 trains a week. That really, really needs to get sorted. So do that for yourselves first. Yeah, and do it as an inspiration to the rest of the world.
Yeah, we've got to fix those trains. We're working on that. We're working on the trains.
Work on the trains.
Your face when Kate brought up her favorite tweet was one of yours. I was like, yeah, tell me more. I was really, I guess, so there's lots of people tuning in, which is awesome, and really just demonstrates, I guess, the influence and mana that you have here in Aotearoa. And I was wondering, for people watching, what's some things that, you know, these are big concepts, and not all of us are privileged enough to be politicians like Thomas and I. So what are some really practical or you know, things that people can do or change or incorporate into their everyday lives that can kind of help that sway and movement towards a donut model?
So like I said, I really profoundly believe that change happens because people are inspired by someone a bit like themselves already doing that thing, which means that all of us are phenomenal change makers, because all of us might be, you know, I'm a mother at the school gate. And when I'm a mother at the school gate, I can influence other mothers at the school gate. Or you might be the newest employee in a company. Put up your hand and ask a question of the CEO. Or you might be the CEO. Dare to do that transformative thing that you already know you should be doing in your company. Or you might be a community organizer or a teacher or a student in a class. So all of us can make a difference. But also when we think about how we can transform our own lives, how we eat a lot less meat. You know, we need to have plant-based diets. It's better for us. It's better for the planet. How we travel. We just talked about that. How we shop. Do you buy secondhand things and actually take a huge pleasure in being part of a reuse and regenerate and remake culture? Or do you just go out to shops and buy new things all the time and get sucked in by that marketing that they love to send to us? How do you save your money? Which bank do you save your money in? Where's your money being invested when it's a saving? How do you generate your energy? Switch energy companies. Switch from a company that's just kind of trying to charm you with that. Well, we have a little bit of, renewables on a mix. I switched as soon as I could to a company in the UK that's 100% renewable energy, because I wanted to be part of powering my home in a regenerative way. I switched my bank account to a bank that I believe is investing in social environmental goods. And there's a huge pleasure for that. I think it's actually something we should do on our birthdays. We should celebrate on our birthdays. I'm going to switch my bank account today. I'm going to switch my household energy provider. And I'm going to enjoy it because I am moving my power. And in doing that, next time I'm chatting to friends about electricity companies or banking, I say, oh, why are you still with that old bank, right? I'm with this one. Why not? And that is a phenomenal power that each one of us has. And how we protest, and how we vote, and how we organize, and how we volunteer. And right now, how we volunteer. Who are we in our communities right now? And wow, notice the pleasure of actually reconnecting with the community, of sharing starter up and down the street, of putting a box of books on the pavement saying, please help yourself. There's a real pleasure to helping others, to connecting to others, and to feeling like we belong.
So you said you'd had some requests from villages and towns and cities, and obviously you've done the donut model for Amsterdam. And so Tam and I are both kind of local body politicians here in Wellington. And I mean, how would you feel about if we could convince our mayors and chairs and so on to get an approach to you about doing a donut for Wellington?
Bring it on. What are you waiting for? We are collecting expressions of interest. I'm really confident that having downscaled the donut to the level of a city, we've created a framework that actually works at multi-level. That's for me the thing I'm truly excited about. And I've been working with Janine Benyus, who, if you don't know her, she's one of the leading thinkers who coined the term biomimicry and made it really a widely understood concept. And she's my hero. And she picked up the donut and sort of flipped it inside out. And between us, we came up with this framework for downscaling it to place. So I'm really confident that what we've got is a framework that can work from a street to a village, to a town, to a city, to a region, to a nation, even to a community of nations. And so let me present it for you for Wellington. If we were taking it to the city of Wellington, we would invite you to ask this question. How can Wellington be a home to thriving people in this thriving place that is the ecosystem of Wellington, while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet? And so right in there, you've got two things. You've got local aspiration. Wow, for Wellington to be a home to thriving people in this thriving place. What a fabulous community and natural world that we live in right here. That's local aspiration. And we set it in a context of global responsibility. We have to figure out how to do that while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet, living within planetary boundaries, thinking about how we procure from other nations, the history of our relationship with other nations, how our investments, how our companies, how our government is impacting on other nations. So these are really, really big questions. And that's what the city portrait does. And it goes into 4 lenses. The first lens, what does it mean to the people of Wellington to thrive? Well, who's best to define that? I reckon it's the people of Wellington. How are you going to answer that? Do you have existing city goals? Do you want to have a public consultation, a public community? Do you want to have citizens assembly? What does it mean to thrive here? And how are we doing against that on the metrics that we have? And where do we want to get to? So that story. What would it mean for Wellington to thrive within its natural habitat? What is the ecosystem of this place? How does nature's genius live and thrive here? How much, if you took some, so if Janine came to Wellington, she'd say, right, take me to the wildland next door. Where is the healthy natural habitat that the city of Wellington's been built upon? Show me the wildland next door. And you take her to, where would you take her?
Well, we'd probably go to Zealandia.
Yeah.
Zealandia.
Okay, so we go there, and she'd take like a couple of hectares, and she'd say, right, how much carbon is this land sequestering? And how much groundwater is it storing after a storm? And how much is it cooling the climate from the treetops to the forest floor? And how much biodiversity does it house? And how much soil is it forming? And these metrics of this wildland next door become the metrics for the city. So could our city sequester as much carbon and cool the climate? Let's get rid of that urban heat island effect. How can we cool the climate like the wildland next door? So it becomes this outrageously beautiful natural metrics that can our city match or exceed the performance of the wildland next door. So there's thriving people in this thriving place. Now let's think about our impact on the well-being of all people through our investment, our procurement, our purchases. What are the labor rights like behind the people who made our clothes and our phones and grew the food? The financial businesses and the banks that are here. So the well-being of people worldwide, and what's the history of our story? Let's bring that in, how we impacted on people, and then the well-being of the whole planet. So if I have a smartphone, thinking about the labor rights of who actually assembled this thing, but also the ecological footprint that's embodied in this phone, and how can we bring that way back in? Because I'm going to bet that Aotearoa, New Zealand, just like the city of Amsterdam, just like my nation and my city, is way over planetary boundaries in its fair share, so needs to come back within. So you've got these 4 lenses: thriving people, thriving place, the well-being of all people, the health of the whole planet, and you put them on the table together and bring people around who work on sewage and racial equality and transport and local air pollution, and say, wow, we're suddenly seated at a framework that embodies us all. And we can talk about the relationship of all these things. So the framework does not give you the answers. It doesn't tell you any answers. It just gives you a fabulous space for asking really profound questions. And can I add one more thing? Yes. Whenever we do the donut with a place, we say, look, you need to look inside yourself. So you, as the city of Wellington, you need to ask yourself, as the city policymakers, what is your purpose? What's the stated purpose of the city of Wellington? I can tell you that the stated purpose of the city of Amsterdam is to be a thriving, regenerative, inclusive city for all citizens. They mean residents in that phrase, while respecting planetary boundaries. Wow, that's pretty good. So what's the purpose of your city? How does it network with who it buys from, its relationships with other cities, with other citizens? How is it governed? Who has voice in the rules and the practices and principles of governance of the city? How is the city owned? Now we're back to ownership. Who owns the land? Who owns the data? And how is the city financed? Where do city finances come from? And what's your relationship to big business and financial institutions? And are they extractive? And how can they be regenerative? So we say to any organization, bank, a business, a city, if you want to use the donut, you're going to have to look at yourself and look at your own design, because we cannot transform the world if we have untransformed design. So this is not an easy snack to pick up, but please, come on board. I'd love to see a donut for the city of Wellington.
And there are so many similarities between Amsterdam and Wellington, and we have many of the same, I guess, vulnerabilities in terms of climate change, and I guess really just stresses the need for us to mitigate and get to zero emissions as soon as we can, while staying in that kind of model that you described. And I got to be honest, as you talk, there are so many questions that I think of along while you're talking, and then you say something incredible and it just goes out of my mind. So thankfully we've got heaps of people online with good questions that can make up for me, but I really love what you just said at the end there, because I think the most important thing for us to remember here in Wellington is that there were an Indigenous people here before us, and they have there are some really incredible thinkers in this city, and incredible Indigenous people such as Kara, who was on the call, Mahinarangi Baker, who have this understanding of the soil and the land and the oceans, and on how food was gathered in particular places, and all of these aspects, what's best planted here, what we can grow, and all of these ideas. So you're right, we don't need to look too far except inwards to see what that looks like in a local context. Now I've just got one question. Well, I've got quite a few questions, but this question's been there from the beginning in the chat, and it's from Adam Crisp. Tēnā koe, Adam. He wanted to know, and I know you have to go soon, so no worries if it's a short answer. They wanted to know, have you found that your Doughnut Economic model sometimes gets co-opted or misinterpreted by those with vested interests?
Great question, and it's a really important question. In fact, I did a sort of town hall meeting with Amsterdam last night, and the same question come up. Do you think the city of Amsterdam is using the donut as a marketing tool? To which my answer was, it's not a smart thing to pick up as a marketing tool, because it's going to come back and bite you if you're just using it as a marketing tool. Absolute danger of it getting co-opted. So let's just separate those two things Adam said. One, misinterpreted. Well, anybody can unintentionally well-intentioned people can misinterpret something. And one of the reasons we're setting up Doughnut Economics Action Lab is to help give a steer, give really clear explanations. What is the social foundation? What is the ecological ceiling? Let's put it in language that anyone can understand. How people use the tool well. So let's put aside misinterpretation. It's our job to help make sure it's clear. Co-opted and intentional misconstruing it, of course there's a danger. Of course there's a danger. It's like, let's go back to where we began. When there's a disruptive event, business as usual can capture it and reinforce their interests. Also, when there's a disruptive idea, business as usual can say, oh, that looks really cool, and let's go and hang out with the cool kids, and let's say, yeah, we're doing the donut, but you know, we'll sort of not really do it, but like look like we're doing. And there's a huge danger to the donut. And I always think when business as usual meets a disruptive idea, something's going to get transformed. And it's our job to make sure it's not the donut. So what we've done is in setting up Doughnut Economics Action Lab, we're inviting people to work with the donut, and we've set up a set of principles of putting Doughnut economics into practice. And these are actually based on the 7 ways to think in my book. And the first one is to embrace the 21st century goal of meeting the needs of all people within the means of the planet. And if you share that goal, well, you need to share that goal if you want to use the donut. And to show that you're sharing that goal, you need to show that you are aiming to align your purpose, networks, governance, ownership, and finance with the donut. That was what I was just talking about, right? If city wants to use it, we need to talk about your purpose, your networks, your governance, and ownership and finance. So if a company, like a really profit-driven company that was just trying to satisfy shareholders, but thought this looked like a good little brand toy to pick up for a while, we would say, you want to use a donut? We're going to dive straight into a deep conversation about how you're owned and how you're financed. And if that looks like it's absolutely at odds with the donut, I'm sorry, we can't endorse that you use it because you are not aligned to the goal of the donut. So we're setting it up with principles to protect it from being co-opted. How is that going to go? I don't know. This is an experiment, but I really believe there's and actually we're experimenting with the idea of putting ideas in the world that it's not like you have to pay money, pay a license fee to be allowed to use it, but it's not completely free and you do what you like with it. It's an idea that comes with conditions of use that they need to be in line with the values the idea espouses. And I think it's a new kind of Creative Commons.
Is it a bit like open source software?
Well, it's not entirely open source because it comes with these conditions of use. So if you think of Creative Commons licensing, at the moment, there are 3 conditions. One, can it be used commercially or not? Do you have to give attribution of where it was from? And can you change it or not? And those are the 3 kind of different buttons you can press on a Creative Commons license. And I think what we're doing is creating a 4th condition, which is, and by the way, you have to use this idea in a way that's consistent with the very nature of the idea. And if you don't, it's really fascinating trying to be intellectually generous with an idea but maintain quality. So we're trying to find a balance between openness, sharing, and allowing people to innovate and play with it, and maintain integrity. Because if it does get co-opted and watered down, then many people say, oh, I'm not using that anymore. That's passé. That's been greenwashed. And why on earth will we want to let that happen? So we are on a journey, and we are making ourselves vulnerable in allowing it to be used. But as I said, I could have said the donut is in the book and it's going to stay in the page of the book, sleep well, good night, and keep it in the book and nobody can touch it. What's the point of an idea that's like that? You have to let it go, but really try hard with the community to guard it and keep it integral to itself.
The reason I mentioned open source was because we were just trying to get an open source platform to have this webinar, because the one we were trying kind of didn't work last night, and Zoom is not super open source. Obviously it's totally proprietary and it's kind of dodgy, and so we were trying to get an open source set up. So we're going to try and do that for next week if it works. And one of the guys you interviewed for your book, Sam Muirhead, who is here and working on open source software and stuff, we're hoping we can all work together to get a platform that works, so we can have this type of corridor and stream it live.
Fantastic.
And
we're also building, we're building Doughnut Economics Action Lab on open tools. So we've built it using Ruby on Rails. Instead of using Google Street Map, we're using OpenStreetMap. And it's that journey of finding tools that might not be as slick as that one you had, but it feels good to be part of the open community. And there's amazing change makers in Amsterdam, a woman called Marlene Sticker, who is building we're advocating open stack design, so that the communication stack is open all the way from the bottom all the way to the top and respects privacy. and data sovereignty. So yes, let's make that. Let's not say, oh, the internet and the network technologies are just owned by corporates and there's nothing we can do. Of course, there's a lot you can do. You can build the alternative and use our organizations to help make that ecosystem emerge.
Right on.
I know. So how many questions do we have you for?
Have you got to go?
Well, it's 10 a.m. and I'm supposed to be chatting to my team. It's our morning stand-up. But how about you hold those questions and then we can bring some of them back if I join you again in another meeting.
I think you should absolutely come back, and we'll be on open source software where you know, we won't be on any of these big companies. We'll be on something homegrown, and everyone can have more opportunities to ask you questions. But maybe just one really important one: if people want to learn more about you and more about Doughnut Economics, where can they go, and where would you direct people to learn some more other than your book? Like, obviously there's the fantastic book that I also have, but where else can they look?
So at the moment, if you go to my website, which is just my name, kateraworth.com, there's all the materials that are publicly available at the moment. There's lots of animations, and I've written a blog about this Amsterdam report, but all my energy is going into setting up a platform with our team, Doughnut Economics Action Lab. We're hoping, cross your fingers with me, we're hoping to launch it in June. And when that's launched, this will be the place for change makers to come, where you can get all the materials that we've developed, but more importantly, you can meet people a bit like yourself who are already doing that thing that you thought was impossible, but actually they've done it. And that is where I think this is just going to lift off.
Oh, nō reira, neira te mihi nui ki ana koe e te rangatira. Thank you so much for giving us a second chance, and for being able to share your whakaaro, your ideas, and your kōrero, your I don't know how to translate that, with everybody this evening. There's consistently been lots of watches, and I hope it has inspired people. And really, just from Aotearoa, just thank you so much for stimulating this conversation, and for sparking and really invigorating all of our imaginations to think of a reality different to the one that is sold to us every single day. So tēnā koe, and thank you so much.
Tēnā koe, and thank you. And please, Aotearoa, please keep being the possibility that you have, because the world is looking for inspiration, and we're hoping it's coming from you and others. But keep leading.
Yay. And Kate said that she'll be back for another call, for another Aotearoa Town Hall once we get the tech side sorted. So that is incredible. Thank you so much. And for those watching, we also announced who we had lined up for next week. We have Tamatha, who is, you know, the man, the myth, the legend, the revolutionary himself. We have Julia Whaiporti. You would have seen her on the news. She is an incredible woman. She specializes in many different areas, and is just one of those people leading the way in terms of re-indigenization of Aotearoa. We have Cleve Cameron, who is just the absolute man. He's done many things. Thomas, you describe him.
He's a wild artistic musician, genius, creative director guy.
He's incredible, and he's crack up. We also have Jess Berenson-Shaw, who is incredible as well. She specializes in communication and the way that we frame things, and really looks and breaks those things down. And who is our last speaker? Thomas.
Chloe Swarbrick.
Chloe, who was the stand-in Kate, who was the stand-in
me a few decades ago, I believe.
Yes.
I heard that.
Yes.
Chloe Swarbrick's cool beans, as far as I'm concerned.
She is very cool beans, and she'll be back. And the theme of next week's kōrero is from recovery to revolution. So it will be looking at what's possible and how people can make change in their own individual capacity. So it's going to be awesome and incredible. Now I need to figure out how to turn this live off.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Now, what do I do with this live stream?
That went
Thank you
well,
everybody
Pam.
for tuning in. Do make sure you stay connected with all of the socials. We will put up another event page. We will be doing very vigorous testing to make sure that whatever local open source software we go with for our streaming is capable of all of you who have indicated you are so keen to engage in this kōrero.
And actually, if you're watching and you feel like helping us, we want to do a test of this platform that we were just talking to some people about earlier, and we need, you know, a few hundred people to go on and see how, you know, basically to try and break it. So we'll put up a test in the next few days, and if you feel like jumping on just for 5 minutes to see how the platform works, and if it can stand up to the pressure, see if we can fit you all in the Aotearoa Town Hall, then that would be really helpful, actually.
That would be incredible. And the software people that we've been talking to, they operate just from down the road from Wellington and Aotearoa, which is incredible. And really, I think speaks to what Kate was saying about why do we look elsewhere for what we need when actually there are people around us and in our communities that do incredible work already. Don't stress if you're just tuning into the end of this kōrero. I'm pretty sure that you can come back and watch the whole live stream later on once I end this. So ngā mihi nui, thank you everyone for tuning in, and really stoked to be able to have given you guys that kōrero. Really excited for next week, and yeah, get in touch, get your questions in, and ka pai tō koutou rā, pō. Ka kite.